Hello, today we're going to take a look at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, and I'm going to take you on a little tour of the theater and talk about some of its unique features, and then we will also learn a little bit about the history of the Globe Theatre after the bump. Hey everybody, I'm Doug Fahl, your Augmented actor. If you're new here and you want to augment your acting career with tips, tactics, and tech, consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell, and I will give you a gold star. So I recently took a trip to London, and on my travels I went to visit the Globe Theatre, and I actually saw one of the shows there. It was a great experience. I highly recommend going to see a show at the Globe. It hands down beat anything that I saw on the West End that trip. It was so engaging and so fun to see this show. So I thought I'd do a little piece on the Globe Theatre and give you a little bit of context and history about it. Let's just jump right in, shall we? I'm at the Shakespeare Globe Theatre doing the Globe Theatre tour with my parents, who are in the background there. So come along. Prior to writing all of his masterpieces, Shakespeare was an actor, and he acted in a company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. Now, in London at this time, there were only a handful of companies that were authorized to perform plays. And Shakespeare's company was one of those companies, but they did not have their own space. They had to rent space. In this company of actors, there was a man named Richard Burbage, and Richard's father was James Burbage, and James Burbage had built one of the first successful amphitheaters in London called simply the Theatre. In about 20 years, they lost their lease on the property, and so that theater was no longer in use. So James Burbage built the Blackfriars Theatre, which was also in London. Shakespeare's company used this theater, but the residents of Blackfriar did not want plays to be performed, so they blocked their use. And so all of James Burbage's money was tied up. And then he died. But he left an inheritance to Richard and Cuthbert Burbage, and those two entrepreneurs, plus Shakespeare and 4 other actors, formed a consortium. In 1599, this consortium of actors and entrepreneurs built the Globe Theatre, and the Globe Theatre is one of the first theaters that was built for a specific theater company. And Shakespeare even owned a share in the profits of the company because he put his own money and savings into the building of the theater. They performed shows in the summertime at the Globe Theatre and in the wintertime at the Blackfriar Theatre. When they were building the Globe, they went to the original site of the theater amphitheater, and they stole the timber illegally and used that to build the structure, the framework of the Globe Theatre. Globe Theatre was wildly popular back then. People from all levels of life would go and see theater. The Globe Theatre was wildly successful for about 20 years. Shakespeare wrote a number of his most famous plays there during that time. And during a production of Henry VIII in 1613, one of the actors set off a cannon explosion during the show, and it caught the thatched roof on fire and burnt the whole globe to the ground. But in 1616, the consortium put money back in and built a new version of the Globe in the same location. This version was a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, and had different construction techniques than the first. In 1644, the Puritans put a ban on theater in London, and the Shakespeare's Globe went out of business, and it was demolished, pulled down to build tenements. It wasn't until the 1970s that actor Sam Wanamaker had a dream to rebuild the Globe. The new theater opened in 1997. It is a very nearly faithful reproduction of the original Globe Theater. Couple differences. This theater fits a smaller capacity, 1,600 instead of nearly 3,000. After the Great Fire of 1666, in which a lot of London burnt down, thatched roofs were banned. Now, the Globe Theatre had to get a particular license to use a thatched roof, so it is treated and coated. It has a sprinkler system inside and guards against all electrical sparks or anything like that. And so they got a permit to use a thatched roof. There's also more entrances and exits into the yard. The stairs to get to the tiers are also larger and more accessible. And they tried to replicate the original feel and size and space of the theater to the best of their ability. Now, the new theater is built about 600 feet away because tenement buildings were built on the original location of the theater. Also, the River Thames shrunk a little bit over the years and was a little bit narrower in this location, so they put it right next to the River Thames again in its new location where it exists now. And recently they opened a second Jacobean style theater inside the Globe property, which has lighting that is completely done by candlelight. The Globe was an amphitheater. It was open air, no cover on the roof except over the stage and in the 3-story tiered seating around the perimeter. There were 2 narrow entrances onto the main floor where the groundlings would go. The groundlings were basically the commoners, people that couldn't afford to go to expensive plays. They could pay the equivalent of £1 to go and see the show, and they packed the place. Nearly 3,000 people could fit into the Globe Theater, standing and seated. And if you're one of the groundlings and it starts to rain, you are SOL. You can't bring umbrellas into the theater. Basically, you would just have to endure whatever nature threw your way while you were watching a show. Now today, only about 1,200 people fit into the theater, and this is due largely to the fact that people are bigger nowadays than they were back in Shakespeare's time, so you could fit more of them in back there. And of course there's now zoning regulations and fire regulations, and you can only fit so many people in legally anymore. And the theater has 3 tiers. The first floor tier just cost a few pounds more, and then the price raised for the next tier, and the highest priced seats were on the top tier. The great thing about seeing a show at the Globe is that everyone could share in it, from the lowest paid commoner to the highest form of royalty. Even the Queen of England came to see shows at the Globe. Now, when royalty or upper class citizens would come and see the show, they would most often sit in the side boxes on the sides of the stage because these were private boxes. A gentleman could afford to rent a private box and have entertainment by local prostitutes or whatnot in the area. And the royalty, they were there to be seen as much to see the show. Oftentimes they would even sit on the actual stage, and they were known to speak back and talk back at the plays. Everybody was, to some degree. The commoners would throw fruit and yell back insults and laugh along with the actors, but the royalty would also be on stage, and they would shout out things to the actors during the show, disrupt the show, sometimes stroll in half an hour late to the performance. All of it was sort of a I don't care kind of attitude. And even in some of Shakespeare's plays, Shakespeare would poke fun of this royalty talking back to the actors by writing royalty into the scenes. He did this with Hamlet, he did this with Midsummer Night's Dream. Basically, there are scenes where the king is watching the play and making comments and asides while the play is going on. So if you can imagine royalty seeing that and also making comments on top of that, it would be sort of a meta situation. The Globe Theater stage is about 5 foot high. It has stairs on the sides and the front. Actors often make their way onto the stage for their entrances and exits through the crowd of people. It's very interactive. There is a bright, shiny mural on the top of the theater which represents the heavens. There's a trap door in the bottom of the stage which goes down to hell, and a trap door on the top of the stage where actors and scenery can descend from the heavens. The stage also has 2 large pillars that support the overhanging roof. And there are tiers on the stage as well for orchestras, bands that might be used in a production, and then also for storage and backstage space and dressing rooms, things like that. The seats in the tiers are benches. They are very steep, raked benches, and they have very little leg room. They're very tightly confined, and that would have been the way that it was back then when people were a little bit smaller and a little bit shorter. Also, the shows were generally performed during the day because they did not have artificial light, and they couldn't use candles because it might burn down the theater. Now, in the last several years, the artistic director of the Globe Theatre has started using artificial lighting so that shows can continue on into the nighttime. Actors who perform at the Globe Theatre describe it as an electrifying experience, a real connection between audience and performer. You are right there next to the actors when you were in the audience. When I was there, I saw a production of Merry Wives of Windsor, and one of the lead actors in that show took a swig from his whiskey bottle and sprayed it all over everybody in the front of the audience, and then threatened to do that throughout the rest of the show. It was very, very fun and engaging. But the actors also have to play way up to the top tiers and off to the sides and the back to hit the royalty that's over there watching the show as well. It's a real communal feeling. The theater was built like an amphitheater. It's like a stadium. It's the same feeling you get when you go to a ball game, like you're there in the action. The performers will talk to the audiences. These soliloquies and monologues that are delivered to an audience are often delivered to just one person in the audience. The actors do not wear microphones. They have to project to a large amphitheater of people. And the amphitheater itself, I found, was very conductive to sound. You could hear actors even when they were talking very softly. It's a magical experience to see a show at Shakespeare's Globe. If you get the chance, please, please don't turn it down. This is a rewarding experience that any actor or director, anybody interested in Shakespeare or history should go take part in. It's not the original Globe. You're never gonna get the original Globe. Some people complain and moan about that, but it is as close a replica to the original Globe as you can get, and you will feel like you are there in Shakespearean times when you go see a show there. Now, if you enjoyed this video on Shakespeare's Globe, you're also going to enjoy my video on London's West End Theatre District. You can find it over there, and there's some other videos to watch down below. I hope that you share this video with all of your actor friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye!